Welcome back to part 2 of slab building. I shall be demonstrating how to assemble the decorated slabs to make a lidded container. So what I've done is I've prepared all the slabs and I'm now going to cut them to size. And the best way to do this is I've looked roughly at the size of the slabs that I've done and I've made a template. The lid and the base are going to be the same size and slightly larger than the actual box itself. I've got the base here which hasn't got any impressed pattern into it, and I'm going to place the template on there, which makes use of as much of the clay as possible. And then I'm going to use a palette knife, just give it a little clean, and cut these edges. Now, a good way to do this without dragging the clay is to just cut through a little bit at a time. Because clay can stretch, and if you stretch clay, when it dries and is fired in the kiln, it will very often resort back to its original shape. A lot of people refer to it as clay having a memory. So we're going to try and avoid stretching it as much as possible. There we go, and you can see this is holding its shape much better than if it was very wet clay. Right, so that's my base. And I will just soften that sharp edge a little bit with my finger. Save me doing it once it's been assembled. And your hands are your best tools. There, so I've taken that sharp edge off just by running my finger along that. Right, so that's the base, and I'll put that to one side. And then I'm going to cut the template for the sides. I think I overdid it a bit here, but there we go. I'm going to select the nicest. I suppose the nice bit about having a larger bit of slab with patterning is you can select the bit that you like the best, which is what I'm going to do. Right, this is the lid. So this is one of probably the most important bit. So I want to select the nicest part of the pattern there. And you can see it's asymmetrical, it's slightly off the pattern, which I like. So I'm going to place the template on like that. Okay, and then like the base, I'm just going to run my finger along the edge there to get rid of that sharp edge. There we go, so that's the lid. So we'll now start having a go at assembling all the pieces together. Now, as I said to you, we're doing butt joints, because you can do mitered joints where you would cut the angle of your clay at a 45-degree angle, so that when you put them together, you've got this lovely, nice, neat fit where you don't lose any of the pattern. But because we're doing a butt joint, we're going to see one of the edges along the side there. But that's fine, it's just a different way of doing it. So this slab will be going about here, and I'll just hold it there for the moment, and then I'll take one of the side slabs and put that there. Now I'm using the front and back slab is slightly bigger, the thickness of a piece of clay, so that's the full width of there, and then the side bits are going to sit within those, so I had to cut those slightly smaller. so that they would fit in. So that's where they're going to go. So because these are leather hard or nearly leather hard, I'm going to slip and score the surface to glue it together. So I'll explain how that's done. So what we need to do is get a little toothed kidney like this, which is a kidney shaped metal thing with little serrated edges on it. And this is great for just serrating the surface. And I'll cross hatch it, so you go in one direction and then the other direction, and I'll do the whole bit of where we're going to be sticking on the slabs. Serrate the surface of the slab that we're going to be sticking down. And then we get some slip. Now slip is just liquid clay, and here's some I prepared earlier. So it's just clay that is a bit like sort of double cream. That's the consistency you sort of want. And this acts like a glue, and what we'd be doing is just putting it onto one surface. If you put it onto two surfaces, you just have too much, and because this has a lot of water content in it, when it dries, this will actually be a weak point, so you mustn't have too much of it. So we're just going to put some of this slip on the base like that. Actually, I want to do serrate the sides while I'm here. And then I'm going to fix this piece into position and agitate it. Agitating just means you're giving it a tiny little wiggle from side to side, and what this allows to do is to push, not only push the slip away, but also to allow those clay molecules, as you're agitating from the top and bottom, to actually link together. So it's very difficult then to pull them apart. If you don't do this and you just stick them like that, they'll very easily come apart. Whereas if you agitate them, you'll cross all those clay particles and they start merging together. So quite an important thing when you're understanding clay as a material is knowing how much to agitate. Right, I think that's enough. And then I'm now going to put slip along this front edge and up the side here. There. But we're also going to be putting a little wedge of clay in there as well to strengthen it. If I turn that around there, you can see the butt joint that runs along there, which again I can smooth off when I've done this. And then I need to agitate the long edge here. I'm going to add a little wedge of clay on the insides of the joins. Again, this helps strengthen it. So what you do is you roll a little sausage, or a coil as we call it. Don't want it too big. And then this little piece here that I've rolled will be pushed right into that edge there. And then using either your finger, or if your fingers are a bit too fat, to use a little wooden tool like this that's got a little bobble on the end. And this is great for just smoothing down that clay that you've put in. So you can't see the join. when you're drying out your finished piece, you want to dry it out as slowly as possible. So you don't place it in front of a window with direct sunlight, preferably a cupboard somewhere that's not got any wind or draft, and just to dry gently. Now I want to avoid lifting this lid up by peeling it up, because if I do, because it's not really that leather hard, if I bend it, I'm going to crease the clay. And what will happen is if I bend this, I might flatten it back down, but when it's fired in the kiln, it'll curl up. So to avoid doing that, because I want it the other way up, I'm going to put a board over the top of it and then turn the board over, and hopefully, there we go, there's my lid the other way up without me having to curl the edge. So with some of my leftover slab, I'm going to cut 4 pieces. I'm going to be placing them like this. And hopefully these will keep the lid on. Right, so to stick them, I'm going to score and slip them. So just score underneath and on top, and I'll just slip that, agitate. Right, I'm going to let that dry a little more before I put the lid back on to let it dry out properly, because if it's a bit too soft still, which it is, it's going to sag in the middle as it's drying out. The next thing I want to do is put some of those similar little things like that onto the base of this little box. I think it's hard enough to do that. So again, I want to turn this over, but I'm going to try and do it without it walking too much. So I'm going to place that on there. And then turn it over. This reminds me of the little whatnot boxes we used to make years ago out of wood, when my husband and I had a children's furniture business. That's going back a few years. Right, now when I put the little, I might put little ball feet on them rather than flat feet. Right, let's turn this back the other way. Now, just for showing you, I'm going to try and put the lid on there. It might wobble around a little bit because, as I say, it's not quite hard enough. Here we go. One little finished slab tea caddy. So what I'm going to do now is let that dry out slowly, and then it's going to be fired in the kiln to a bisque firing, which will be about 1000 degrees centigrade, and that will keep the surface or the body of the clay absorbent so that it can take the glaze, which I'll show you in the next video.